Hello beautiful bookish people, my name is Hannah and today I just want to recommend my favorite weird books.
Yep, that's me.
Cut, intro, done. So you may ask what is a weird book, and first things first, I would thank you for asking. I would define a weird book as anything that values absurdism over reality. They value the metaphor and the similes, and they hinge their stories on unconventional character arcs. Basically anything Books and Lala would like, so those are the type of books that I want to talk about today. Some of my favorite weird books, some of my favorite absurdism, surrealism, magical realism-esque type of books. That was a lot of words, but I'm going ahead and get my favorite books out of the way because I feel like I talk about them enough. But first things first, we have to recommend Places No One Knows and The Raven Boys. Of course, are you new here? Hi, my name is Hannah and I love Maggie Stiefvater. So The Raven Boys is about this group of 4 boys who are on a quest to find an ancient dead Welsh king so that they may get a wish in return. So they meet this girl named Blue Sergeant, and she is kind of an amplifier. Anything she is around, the powers will kind of increase. The voices will be louder. The clues will be written in Sharpie and all that stuff. But I feel like The Raven Boys is kind of a given when it comes to like weird surrealism lyrical writing book recommendations, so I'm just gonna move on and also tell you to read Places No One Knows. But that's a given. I love it. I love Brenda Jovanoff. This has become a Brenda Jovanoff stan account, and Places No One Knows follows a girl named Waverly who is struggling to find herself and find a correct sleeping pattern. So one day she just kind of wanders off in a dream and stumbles into this other boy named Marshall. It's a beautiful love story, talks about anxiety, social hierarchies. Any time a book talks about girl politics, I love it. And I feel like this one does it really well. But moving on, you know I love the dream metaphor, so let's just get into the next recommendation because those are a given. So the next book I want to talk about is actually a semi-definitive list of worst nightmares. I put a semi-definitive list on this list, look at that, because House of Hollows, which is also by Crystal Sutherland, has been talked about a lot recently on BookTube, but I feel like a semi-definitive list is a bit underrated. So basically follows this girl, and her family has been cursed that every one of her family members will die based on their biggest fear. So her brother is afraid of the dark, her dad is afraid of, I think, of small places, and so the whole idea of this book is Esther, our main protagonist, has to go on this long quest to break the curse, find a romance, and actually fight her own demons in the process. And one thing I am a sucker for is the literary quest. When we are going on this journey to solve the mystery, to break the quest, but we're actually dealing with our own inner psyche. I would describe this book as like a Morgan Matson narrator meets a Maggie Stiefvater quest. So if you liked House of Hollow and you wanted a slightly snarkier main protagonist, a semi-definitive list of worst nightmares is really for you. So the next book that I really want to talk about is The Nest by Kenneth Opel. This is one of my favorite, like, scary, quote-unquote creepy book. But The Nest follows a young boy who is trying to protect his younger brother from these weird moth creature things, and he's trying to communicate with his parents like what's going on, but they're not listening. So our young protagonist ends up striking a deal with this wasp queen to save his younger brother, and it's written in such a really unique way. But The Nest is, to date, even though it's a middle grade, one of like the creepiest, scariest books I think I've ever read. I love how Kenneth Opel handled like small spaces or like battles with your inner demons type of gig. that I think this book should be talked about more, and I never hear anyone talking about Kenneth Appel. And guess what, guys? He's great. So the next book I want to talk about is actually by Nova Rensuma, who's another underrated author that I don't hear too much about. And the book is called A Room Away from the Wolves, which is about a girl who has recently run away from her home. Her mom has always talked about this Catherine house for underprivileged, underappreciated girls, and so when she feels underappreciated by her mom because she recently got remarried, she runs away to New York to Catherine House, a mysterious quote-unquote orphanage where the pictures move and there's hidden staircases. And this book is all about finding friendship and romance and finding that one person who is going to stick it out with you. What this book is really good at is the ambiance. But I'm gonna tell you, I love a haunted house. I think it is one of the best horror tropes. It's very much a love letter to New York. But if I were to give it buzzwords, it would definitely be a haunted house with moving staircases and the paintings see your innermost darkest fears. So the next book that I think should be a staple on anyone's weird shelf is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. He, I think, is a genius. So Annihilation follows this group of scientists investigating this Area X where the government and scientists aren't sure what's going on. Plants are growing, it seems like a radioactive area kind of gig, and so a group of 4 go into this area to investigate what's going on. We follow the biologist, and she is investigating the plants. She's noticing the different kinds of pattern growth, and like, I'm gonna tell you right now, as someone who was not fond of science in school, this book still hit. Like, I didn't know anything about like photosynthesis or nothing, but the way Jeff Vandermeer talks about plants is the most interesting thing. And like, I am not even BSing you right now. He has this ability to introduce an idea in the most interesting way and then subvert it, and like 20 pages later, where it kind of like a plant grows in your mind and it festers to where you're thinking, this is not natural, this is not weird, this is going to come up later, and it does. And I don't know how Jeff Vandermeer does it, because does horror come from the fear of the protagonist or from the reader? That is the question I will pose you. But moving on, the next book I kind of want to talk about, following in this adult vein, is Census. Census is possibly one of the weirdest books I have ever read. It is about, how do I even explain it? I will say Census, I think, is a giant metaphor for what it feels like when you are a parent of a special needs child. So it's this grand metaphor about these 2 travelers kind of going on a quest to meet people in different ways. They're kind of like Grim Reaper-esque figures. And I would say it's like The Road, that classic novel, but put it on a science fiction turn, and then you have Census. It's like the weirdest puzzle that doesn't make sense until you get the edges and understand the diaphragm, and then it's just a beautiful picture of parenthood. Explain it. It's one of the most fascinating and like weird books. I did not enjoy my reading experience while reading it, but I cannot stop thinking about it. So that's why I'm going to recommend it to you. So I only have 2 more books left on this list, and the second to last one is Bone Gap. Bone Gap is such an interesting retelling of Hades and Persephone, because it takes like those weird elements from the myth that you've forgotten, like Demeter's like other child who also turns into a horse, and takes that idea and puts it in this surrealism South story. So this book follows 2 brothers, and one has to come home from medical school to take care of the other because their mom has recently run away. Or been captured to the underworld. And our protagonist, Finn, kind of has this body blindness, so he can only see figures in a sense. So he saw his mom being captured and he could not describe this dark looming figure that came and got her. So he describes this figure as like a tall man who moves like a cornstalk in the wind, and that is kind of how this book is written. It's very third person, but I don't think that detracts from getting to know these characters. It's very much a myth retold through its elements. If you like fantasy mixed with surrealism, this book is for you. If you like the small town South vibe where we're talking about loneliness, this book is for you. If you like brotherhood being tested through the underworld, guess what? This book is for you. If you are looking for a direct retelling, this is not it. But if you want an abstract reanalysis of the myth, set in the South, how many times can I say that? Yes, 100% your gig. But moving on, the last book that I think is one of my favorite quote-unquote weird books is Bunny. This, again, is because it talks about girl politics, I love. So it follows this girl who is in this MFA program, and there's this group of girls called the Bunnies, kind of similar to the Heathers. The teachers love their work, they're rich and popular and pretty, and they all call each other Bunny. So it's all about this girl's journey, trying to get involved in this weird clique, discovering what she wants as a writer. And I think, again, with a lot of these weird books, it can kind of be whatever you want. But what I saw in the narrative is, I think the author was hinting at, sometimes with MFA programs and writing retreats, sometimes they have the tendency to create the same writer and what that does to the creative process. The energy in this book is very much, what is creativity and why are we judging it? But I loved Bunny, and I think about it a lot, and that kind of concludes this video. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Keep reading and all that jazz. And so again, we have this big grand quest. That is actually not correct. Cut that, Hannah. And that's the weird thing about the unknown, is guess what, guys? You don't know what's coming. Get it? Oh, that's so too reminiscent of Ellen, so I'm not gonna do that. In third person, I actually don't think that's right. Oh my gosh, I'm a terrible book reviewer. Thumbnail. Get it?